Welcome guys to an interesting session where I want us to look at biology paper 1 for the year 2024 for internals. And for those that may be interested in joining my online classes, please feel free to text me on this number 0962 89 04. So I offer online lessons for biology, science, both chemistry and physics, mathematics, English, as well as civic education. So let's begin with our first question. So question 1 reads, which characteristic of living organisms involves ingestion? So ingestion looks at the uptake of food into our mouth. Then we have the absorption, which is the movement of digested food from the blood into the cells. Then assimilation is all about the usage of digested food by the cells so that we may have the requirements that we need. So these three properties describes what we call nutrition, because excretion is all about the removal of waste products. Growth is all about the increase in the number of cells. Then we have respiration, which talks about the release of energy from the food substance. We move on to question number 2. Which cell organelle is involved in respiration? So respiration is all about release of energy. So if you look at the organelles found in cells, the one responsible for releasing of energy is mitochondria. That's why mitochondria is sometimes known as a powerhouse. Then we move on to question number 3. Which of the following is true regarding active transport? So active transport, question A, meaning multiple choice A, an import of energy is not required. This is not true. It allows particles to pass easily between lipids in cell membranes. This is not true. It occurs against a concentration gradient. And since it occurs against a concentration of gradient, energy is required. We move on to question number 4. The diagram demonstrates enzymes specificity and the stages in which an enzyme controlled chemical reaction may occur. So we have two structures. We have structure L and structure M. Now identify L, M, N, and O. So I'm going to first begin looking at L. So if you look at the structure of L, the structure of L did not change after the completion of a chemical reaction. So you can see that the L is the same. Since the L is the same, therefore it is representing an enzyme. So remember, the enzyme acts as a biological catalyst, but it did not take part in a chemical reaction. Therefore, the shape of the enzyme does not change even after the reaction is done. So L is enzyme. Then what of M? So M combined with L and it breaks into two. Therefore, L is a substrate. M is a substrate. Then N, the region where the substrate is meeting with the enzyme, is called the active site. Then what we have, these two are the products. So the answer is A, enzyme, substrate, active site, and products. We move on to question number 5. Which of the following is not a good source of lipids? So if you look at lipids, we are indirectly looking at something like fats. So for this one, we have avocado. Castor seeds have lipids, caterpillars have lipids, cheese have lipids. Which of the following food nutrients promotes peristalsis? So peristalsis is the movement of food substances in the alimentary column, and it moves like a wave. So if you look at this peristalsis, for it to be carried out easily, the food must move easily, and we need what we call the roughage. Question number 7. A diet rich in iron is ideal for which group of people? Pregnant women. The diagram shows part of a leaf. So a leaf carries processes like photosynthesis. We have uh, gaseous exchange, and from the cells that we have, cell A, B, C, and D, which part shows epidermal? So the epidermal is the outer layer of a leaf. So we have cell A shows the epidermal cells. Which of the following is an example of an organism which carries out saprophytic nutrition? So saprophytic nutrition is a type of nutrition where a living organism depends on something that is dead or something that is decaying. So it's where an organism which has life is depending on something that has no life. So the best answer for this one is a rhizopus. We move on to question number 10. The following diagram shows a human tooth, and from the structure we can tell that this is canine. Identify the tooth and its function. So canine is A for tearing flesh. Then we move on to number 11. Which of the following food nutrients is an end product of digestion along the alimentary canal? So if you look at the end products, we are looking at the products, or we are looking at things that we are getting after digestion is done. So we are looking at food values in smaller sizes that can be easily absorbed into the bloodstream. So from here, if you look at proteins, these are large molecules. Fats are large molecules. Cellulose, large molecules. Then the amino acids is the answer, because the amino acids are the end products of the proteins. So you need to know the end products of proteins, fats, cellulose. It's very important. Let's go to question number 12. Which changes occurs to the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles when a person breathes in deeply? So we are looking at inspiration, the intake of air inside our body. So what happens to the diaphragm? It contracts. Now the good part about this process is that what happens to the diaphragm is the same what happens to the external intercostal muscles. So the external intercostal muscles will also contract. Number 13. Which of the following is the correct word for anaerobic respiration? So anaerobic respiration is the type of respiration occurs in human beings in the absence of oxygen, or when there is insufficient of oxygen. So the body automatically switches from aerobic to anaerobic. Now the word equation is that glucose will break down to give us lactic acid and energy. So the answer is D. If you look at ethanol, this should be in plants. So this should be in plants. Then 14. Which of the following can help to reduce the causes of stigma to people living with human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS? So stigmatization is where health people talks negatively about people with HIV in such a way that these people becomes uncomfortable of founding with those that are negative. So now what can help? Counseling and testing does not help for stigmatization. That can only help someone who is sick. So the best way is sensitization. Like you teach people that you can eat with someone who has HIV and still you can't get HIV. So as long as there is no transfer of liquid or fluid from someone who is HIV positive to someone who is negative, then the disease cannot be transferred. Move on to question 15. The following diagram shows the tissues in a section of the root of a green plant. Identify the parts numbered 1. So numbered 1, this is epidermis. Then in number 2, this should be phloem. So remember, phloem transports manufactured food such as glucose. Then number 3, we have xylem. Xylem transports mineral salts from the soil to the leaves, and water, and sometimes provides strength needed by the plant. So the best one is A. Number 16. Jane has blood group A. She needs a blood transfusion. From which blood groups can she receive blood? So A can receive from A, from ferro A, and also O. Remember, O is considered to be a universal donor. So the answer is D. Number 7, the following diagram shows the relationship between the blood circulatory system and the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system acts as a drainage of a human body. It drains the fluid, which is collectively known as tissue fluid. For example, A represents the tissue fluid, but when it is in the lymph vessel, it is now known as lymph fluid. So B is our lymph. So which labeled part represents the lymph capillary? So the answer is B, because C represents the tissues. So tissue or tissues are just group of similar cells performing the same function. Then D is a blood vessel. So a blood vessel is a vessel in which blood passes. We move on to 18. Which of the following is an excretory product of the lungs? So we have about 3 or 4 excretory organs. We have the lungs, we have the skin, sometimes the liver, and apart from, so we have the skin, lungs, liver, and the kidney. So kidney secretes urine, liver secretes like excess, may talk of excess salts, and also making a detoxification, making of toxic substance into less toxic. Then we have the skin, which secretes sweat. Then we have the lungs, which secretes carbon dioxide. So the answer is carbon dioxide. Which of the following are the important organs in homeostasis? So liver, heart, and kidney, no. Liver, kidney, and the skin, yes. We move on to question number 20. Which of the following labeled glands is associated to production of insulin? So remember, insulin is a hormone, and hormones are chemical substances produced by endocrine glands, which work as messengers. So they carry information from the organ producing it to the targeted organ. So the targeted organ is an organ where a hormone has its effect. So if you look at the given structure, we have glands like D, the ovary. So the ovary contains ovules and also produces hormones like progesterone. Then we have C, which is the pancreas. So the pancreas produces pancreatic juice during digestion, and insulin and glucagon when acting as exocrine system. Then we have B, which is the adrenal. Then we have A. So A, these are thyroid gland. So we are told which of the following labeled gland is associated to produce insulin. So the answer is C, pancreas. So the pancreas produces the insulin, and the insulin controls the high level of glucose in blood. So the excess uh, glucose will be converted into its storage form known as glycogen. Then the glycogen is stored in the liver and also the muscles. We move on to question number 21. The diagram shows a cross section through a human spinal cord. Which one of the parts labeled is a relay? So a relay is a neuron between the sensory. So after the sensory, we have the relay, then we have the motor neuron. So A is the sensory, B is the white matter. So white matter is found in the spinal cord. Then C is our answer, relay. D is our motor. Sensory transports the electrical impulses from the receptor to the coordinators. Then motor neuron transports electrical impulses from the coordinators to the effector until the response is done. 22. The following diagram shows a defective eye of a person. So since the meeting of the rays of light is beyond the retina, this is known as a long sight. So a long sight is just a condition where a person can see a distant object but unable to see a close by object. So what is really happening during this defect? So the normal process is that the rays of light should meet on the retina. So should meet on the retina. So when the rays of light meet beyond the retina, we have this condition of long sight. Now, if they meet before the retina, we have the short sight. So short sight is when the rays of light meet beyond the retina, before the retina. Then long sight is where they meet beyond the retina. So this can be due to the size of the eyeball. So now, how can we correct this defect of long sight? So we need a convex lens. So a convex lens will force the rays of light to bend more so that they can meet before the on the retina. So the lens is unable, it is not managing to make light to bend to an extent of meeting or falling on the retina. So the lens is needed now to help now for light to bend more so that it can fall on the retina. Thus, the answer here is B. Number 23, the bones of the skull, ribs, sternum, and vertebral column form up the axle. So this is the axle, it's the axis. Then those that forms the arms and the legs is the appendicular. Question number 24. The diagram shows a plant shoot and invertebrates in relation to their response to a stimulus. So question, which responses are being shown by these organisms? So let's look at the plant. So the normal growth of the plant was to be in this direction. Now, since the rays of light are coming in this direction, we can see that there was a bending toward light. So since there was a bending toward light, this is called positive. So if it's toward a stimulus, it's called positive since it's light, photo, and the response by plants is known as tropism. So here we have positive phototropism, meaning the plant is responding toward light. We move on to this one. So we have damp cotton wool. Then here we have the rays of light. So on this region, we can say there is light. Now, since there is a black cover, this black cover is preventing light from passing through. Therefore, it is an opaque. So since there is no light here, it means this area is dark. So whatever invertebrates that were put here, they moved to the region where light was not there. They moved to a dark region. Since they moved away from light, this is called the negative. Now, since the organisms move by their entire bodies, we call negative phototaxis. So taxis is where an organism move with its entire body. So the answer for this one is D. Positive phototropism, negative phototaxic. We move on to question 25. Which of the following differentiated cells is thickened with lignin and provide support? So it's sclerenchyma or sclerenchyma, whatever. The diagram shows a type of germination. So we have a seed. Then we have radicle, is the part of the seed that changes into a root system. Then we have here we should have plumule. So the plumule changes into a shoot system. Now after the germination is done here, we can see that the cotyledon appeared. So appeared above the ground. Since it appeared above the ground, this is called epigeo. So what should do? Happy, take it like exit. Then hypo, take it like below. So hypogeo is where the cotyledons remains in the soil, like for the maize seed. Now for a bean seed like this one, we can see that the cotyledons appeared above. Therefore, the answer is A. What type of asexual production occurs in this? So here we have budding. So we have budding. 28. The following diagram represents one of the methods of natural propagation. So here it was running, so this is it, runner. Which method of natural propagation is found? So this is the runner. The diagram shows a generalized structure of a flower. Identify the part labeled X. So these are the answers. So the answers produces the male sex cells known as the pollen gland. So we have the pollen gland. Then we have the answer is the male. Number 30. The following diagram shows the structure of an insect pollinated flower. So it's insect, which feature on the diagram shows that the flower cannot self-pollinate. So if you look at the stigma, this stigma is longer than the male part, so you have short filament. So the answer is C. 31. Which of the following correctly states the function of the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles in the male reproductive system? So the answer is A. Prostate gland produces the fluid in which the stem cells live. Seminal vesicles provide nutrients to the stem cells. So this is under reproduction. Which of the following is a natural method of birth control? So it's rhythm. So what is this rhythm? So rhythm is whereby a couple decides not to have sex during the fertile period. So like if you look at the menstrual calendar from 12, 13, 14, 15 up to 16, these days are considered to be fertile. Since they are considered to be fertile, a couple may decide to stay away from these days. So that is what we call rhythm. It's natural because there is no external object or thing that is taken to prevent the pregnancy. Number 33, the genetic characteristics expressed in an organism is called a trait. 34, the following events take place in one of the stages of mitosis. So we have number 1, the nuclear membrane disappears. Number 2, the chromosomes move to the center of the cell. Mind you, the center of the cell sometimes is called equator. So if you found this, don't be confused. Then number 3, the chromosomes align themselves at the cotorizum. The chromosomes are still attached to the spindle fibers. That's the centromere. Which stage of mitosis is described in the statement? So this is the metaphase. And if you are maybe having issues on how to remember the chronological order of these stages, you can be using this heat map. So the heat map gives you of how these stages are in order. So I for interphase, P for prophase, M for metaphase, A for anaphase, T for telophase. 35. In classification, which of the following has the highest number of organisms? So this is just the kingdom because it's the highest. Which component of soil is lost when crop remains aberrant? This should be human. Calcium, clay, sand can be affected. In which of the following pyramids of biomass does the arrow shows the correct flow of energy? So energy from the higher or longer box to a smaller one, so the base one is there. Which of the following factors directly causes population increase? Disease causes a decrease because people die. Immigration, E for exit. So immigration is where people goes out of the country. So when people, like for example in Zambia, so for those that leave Zambia, maybe goes to other countries, maybe for work, maybe for whatever reason, they cause the population of Zambia to decrease. Then immigration is where people come from other countries and come into our country, like Zambia. What we expect when that happens, the population will increase. Therefore, the answer is 39. Which of the following is likely to contribute to land pollution? So land pollution, dead plant remains. No, this makes the land to be fertile. Mineral salts make the land to be fertile. Non-biodegradable. These are materials that cannot decompose. So it can be decomposed or decay. The last one, question 40. Which of the following is the importance of biodiversity? This question is for you guys. So comment your answers in the comment section below. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.